Hi everyone, Nathan here from Mighty Lancer Games. Today we're just going to show you how to dry brush using these simple tools. So a lot of people ask us how to dry brush, and it's a very simple skill that you'll use a lot in your painting. And there's only a couple of items that you really need: a miniature to paint, some paint that you're going to use to dry brush. So for this example we're going to use Army Painter Ash Grey over a black undercoat, just to show you how the basics work. A flat ended brush here this is a Citadel small dry brush. This is the best style of brush to use, not particularly a Citadel brush, but a flat ended brush that's quite soft and completely dry, so you need to make sure that you've not been it's not wet in any way, is what we mean there. Something to put your paint in, so I'm going to use this cut off old blister pack, and some tissue, some paper towel, to wipe off the excess paint from your brush. To begin with, we're just going to put some paint on the palette. Now we're just going to put it neat out of the bottle onto our palette surface. You don't need a huge amount, so about this much. So these squares on this board, on this guide here, they're 1 centimetre, so a blob about 1 centimetre diameter should be fine to begin with. And then what you're going to do with your miniature to one side, let's stick him over here, is you're going to get some paint on your brush. Now you don't need a lot to begin with, so about this much paint, if you can see that. So don't absolutely cake your brush in paint. You just need about this much paint on the end of your brush. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get your paper towel here, and you're going to brush most of that paint off, which seems crazy, but this is why you don't need to load your paint up with your brush with a great deal of paint. Right. So hopefully you can see that there's a little bit of paint pigment here left in the brush, but not a great deal, and you can test it by rubbing it on your skin there, so you can see how little paint's gone onto my finger. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get your fur surface or your armour surface. Dry brushing works best on textured surfaces, so you really want to be brushing in the direction away from the fur. So fur normally falls downwards, so instead of brushing this way, which you would maybe instinctively do, you want to be brushing that way. So if you see, you just need to apply the slightest bit of pressure and brush upwards in the direction of the fur, and you'll start to see the fine highlights that you're getting from this process appearing on the model. Now you can do this with whole loads of textures, and you can different paints. So the only reason we're using grey is so that it's really obvious against the black, and you can see how the contrast shows. But if I was painting this miniature from scratch, I would start with a dark brown dry brush, and then I would build it up slowly until we got to a final highlight of this colour. So, and you can go heavier with your dry brushing to create different effects. And by heavier, I mean not to put more paint on the brush, but to go over an area repeatedly, like this, where you'll see that it's capturing a lot more of the detail. Whereas if you go for a light brush over an area, you only get very fine edge highlights on there. But if you repeatedly go over it, you're going to cover a lot more surface of those raised areas. And then if you come back over that with another lighter colour later, then you could do a light dry brush and it will pick out just those finer high details. So you can get a lot of build of colour with just this simple technique. and it works best on larger areas, obviously, because of the way that you're using your brush and you're using a large brush. So this is obviously a small dry brush, but you can get up to large sizes. So this is a medium dry brush, and then you get even bigger than this. So if you're doing multiple layers of texturing, you're better off to have multiple brushes on the go, because you don't want your brush to be dry at all. If you can, to be wet, sorry. If you can help it. Now, you see here I've got a little bit of paint that I brushed off onto my tissue. So I'm going to go back to that because that's a little bit damp, and I'm just going to reload my brush and just do a little bit more there. And that's it. That's the basics of dry brushing. So brush into the texture, I would describe that as, into the texture of the miniature, and do light passes. And if you need it to be a heavier colour transition like this, then do multiple passes. Don't try and force your brush into the figure to load as much paint in there as possible. Just do multiple small passes to build the colour up. And if you want to use different gradients of colour, then you can do that with varying amounts of passes over to build the colours up on the different textures. So, hope that's been helpful to you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.